Hey guys, it's Ellen Brock, novel editor. Today I'm going to talk about opening hooks. I already talked about opening hooks a couple years ago, but I didn't really provide many examples, so I wanted to go over it again today so that we can look at a few novels to see how they use opening hooks not only at the very beginning, but throughout the first chapter to keep the reader invested. So I'm going to go over a variety of hooks today. Some are more obvious, while some are a lot more subtle, so you can see what type of hook will work best for your novel. But first, let's go over what a hook is. A hook is essentially raising a question that the reader wants answered. Usually this question is raised through mystery or clues, but it can also be raised simply by presenting an interesting situation or an interesting character, something that's so unique that the reader wants to see how it plays out or wants to know more about it. Most novels will use multiple types of hooks to keep the reader invested in the story. They might present different hooks back to back, or they might even present hooks about different story elements even in one sentence. In My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult, there's a prologue that immediately raises questions. In my first memory, I am 3 years old and I am trying to kill my sister. Now that's just a tiny piece of the prologue, but you can see immediately how it raises a question for the reader. Who is this girl? Why did she want to kill her sister? And what was the situation that led to this? Chapter 1 then hooks the reader again by explaining how Anna, the protagonist, was chosen as an embryo to be a genetic match to her sick sister so that she could help her sister to get better. Anna then describes how her parents explained her conception. They sat me down and told me all the usual stuff, of course, but they also explained that they chose little embryonic me specifically because I could save my sister Kate. We loved you even more, my mother made sure to say, because we knew what exactly we were getting. Rather than raising mystery about what's going on with Anna, Picoult chose to tell us immediately that Anna is an organ donor for her sister. And this worked really well because, like I mentioned earlier, the situation being unique raises inherent questions about what will happen, and this can help keep the reader engaged. You don't necessarily need to be mysterious to get the reader invested if the idea is inherently interesting and captivating to the reader. By contrast, Picoult takes the opposite approach later in the chapter by raising mystery instead of telling the reader what's going on. The only thing that keeps me steady is knowing I'm not the first person to stand in front of this counter holding the one item in the world I never thought I'd part with. I have something to sell, I tell him. In this section, Picoult uses mystery to keep us intrigued and invested. Now we're wondering why Anna would need money so badly and why she would be willing to part with something that means so much to her. At the end of chapter 1, we finally learn that Anna is going to sue her parents for the right to her own body because she doesn't want to make any more donations to her sister. And this hits us with another strong hook. This is a unique situation that we feel compelled to know more about because it isn't something that we've read before. So Picoult uses a variety of hooks in this first chapter, unique situations as well as mystery to keep us invested. She raises mystery about the character when we learn initially about how she maybe attempted to kill her sister as a small child, and she raises mystery about the situation when Anna goes into the pawn shop and we're not really sure why she needs money. She also hits us with two unique situations, both Anna being chosen as an embryo, and Anna wanting to sue her parents for the rights to her own body. Both of these situations are unique and captivate us inherently because they're not things we've seen before. Now let's take a look at a novel that has slightly subtler hooks. In My Diary at the Edge of the World by Jodi Lynn Anderson, there's a fairly subtle hook in the first sentence. I'm on top of the hill, looking down on the town of Clifton, Maine. It's an early fall day, and so far no one's noticed that I'm where I'm not supposed to be. Rather than hitting the reader over the head with a really flashy or big hook, this is a really subtle hook that just raises questions about why she's not supposed to be on this hill and why she's there anyway. In the second paragraph, we get a bit more information. I've seen two bad omens since breakfast. A crow sitting on the fence at the edge of our yard, and a death watch beetle on my windowsill. These are both signs that someone is going to die. So I thought I'd better write them down in case someone does die and no one believes me later. The reader is now hooked by a question, is somebody really going to die? And the reader is also hooked by a unique character. Who is this girl? Why does she see omens? And what does this mean about her world? A couple paragraphs later, we then get the explanation of why she's not supposed to be out on the hill. It's not exactly safe to be out. The dragons are on their way south again, from the northern reaches of Wales and Scotland and Ireland to hibernate in South America. The answer to this question creates payoff for the reader. It lets the reader know that when you set something up, you are going to deliver an answer, and that's important. And though you don't have to deliver the answer right away, and sometimes you might want to draw mystery out for a long time, payoff is very satisfying for the reader and can encourage them to continue reading and to trust you as the writer. This sentence also raises questions about the setting and hooks us with this unique situation where we want to know more about the world that the character lives in. Then later in the first chapter, we learn about an ominous cloud that she sees, and we wonder for a little while as the reader what this cloud means and how it's significant. And then later on, in a couple paragraphs after the cloud is introduced, we learn that this cloud comes to collect people when they die. So again, we're hooked by the idea of who's going to die, whether someone really is going to die, and those questions really keep us invested in the story. So Anderson uses several different hooks throughout this first chapter, none of which are overly big or flashy, but all of which are very effective at keeping the reader interested and invested in what's going on. While My Sister's Keeper takes about 13 pages to introduce those various hooks throughout the prologue and first chapter, In My Diary at the Edge of the World takes about 8 or 9 pages. Night Runner by Khaled Hosseini takes only about 1.5 pages to introduce a strong hook that keeps us invested, and this is a very short opening chapter. Hosseini really only uses one hook in his opening chapter, though he brings it back in multiple times, and that's why I wanted to use this one as an example to demonstrate how you can continue to raise mystery about the same thing throughout a chapter without necessarily introducing multiple types of hooks. The novel starts with the opening line, I became what I am today at the age of 12, on a frigid, overcast day in the winter of 1975. Immediately the question is raised about what happened that changed him, especially at such a young age, and the paragraph goes on to introduce another question. I remember the precise moment, crouching behind a crumbling mud wall, peeking into the alley near the frozen creek. Now we're wondering why he peeked into this alley, what he saw, and how it contributed to how he changed. One day last summer, my friend Rahim Khan called from Pakistan. He asked me to come see him. Standing in the kitchen with the receiver to my ear, I knew it wasn't just Rahim Khan on the line. It was my past of unatoned sins. So this section gives us another question, which is a great hook. It has us wondering what he did and why he feels like he's guilty and why he feels like he has a sin he needs to atone for. And it also gives us an emotional hook because now we understand that he feels guilty, and that gets us invested in him as a character. Then at the end of the chapter, we're reminded again that something changed in 1975, and again we're wondering what it was that changed. So Hosseini does a great job of trickling information to the reader, just enough that we feel like we're learning little bits or we're getting a little bit more of a sense of what happened. But we're not really fully understanding anything about what's occurring at this point. And that's a great way to hook the reader. The desire to know and to have those questions answered is really the backbone of how a hook works. As soon as you've answered all the questions for the reader, they're probably going to lose interest and not really have any reason to keep reading. So I hope this video gave you a sense of how you might be able to use an opening hook, not just at the very beginning, but throughout your first chapter to keep the reader invested. I'll be back on Friday with a video about prologues, when you might want to use one, why you might not want to use one, and I will continue to be uploading videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout August. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I will also be hosting a free workshop on my blog where I'll be critiquing first pages. If you want to submit your work to that, the link is in the description. Happy writing, guys!